listening to the House by the Video Store podcast.
There's no more room in hell. The dead will walk near.
We have such sights to show you.
I kick ass for the Lord!
Praise God! Give away!
Hello there, and welcome to the House by Video Store podcast. I'm your host, William, and joining me today will be Sean.
Hello.
And Derek will not be joining us because he was not able to watch the movie. But on this episode, we're discussing the John Carpenter film, In the Mouth of Madness, which is one of his apocalypse trilogy films that are kind of the Lovecraftian-inspired movies from his filmography. We'll also be discussing things we recently went to the Days of the Dead convention that was in Louisville, and we'll be talking about some of the things we saw there and some of the things that went on with that.
Our wheels are already greased because we just recorded an hour and a half of Twin Peaks talk too. So
Yeah.
we won't really dive into that too much, but we watched the finale. The last finale video will be on our YouTube page and our site soon.
Yeah.
We can talk like 2 sentences about that maybe in a little bit, but
Yeah, go to that video for the substantive
Yeah.
thoughts and discussion.
it's a whole other thing to get into that if you don't watch Twin Peaks.
If you don't watch it, you'll just kind of be left scratching your
Yeah.
head. So before we discuss the Days of the Dead and the movie, recent news, another huge loss for the horror community, Tobe Hooper passed away. And so then you also, you had Tobe Hooper, you had George Romero, in recent years you had Wes Craven. So a lot of the horror directors that were people's heroes and they got a lot of people into filmmaking, we're seeing some of those directors pass away. I unfortunately never had the ability to meet to meet George Romero or Wes Craven or Tobe Hooper, because I don't for the most part we go to some cons for the site and stuff like that. But before I got involved with the site, I don't really go to conventions very often. Not that Wes Craven ever did any of that I can remember.
I don't know of any Tobe Hooper that I have been around here.
Yeah.
George Romero was in Indy and Nashville. He may have came here at Days one time.
George Romero would go to the cons, but Wes Craven was still actively involved, at least in recent years, involved in big budget movies. So I think a lot of the career trajectories for different filmmakers, because the end segment of George Romero's career was much more, he's on the indie side again. He did Land of the Dead with a little bit of money, but then he did Diary of the Dead and Survival of the Dead and some other projects. So I think that the convention circuit serves people doing independent projects well that you can sell copies of there, things like that, versus big time directors who are still working on big Hollywood projects. I don't know they get as much out of going to the conventions.
Yeah.
Especially if they're actively involved in development. You probably make more from producing or working on producing a TV series or movie than you do for showing up and doing autographs and things like that, especially if it's not something that you want to do, because I'm sure that's not for everybody.
Yeah, you've probably got to be this right type of person. I mean, for the people that want to do it, it's a nice little chunk of change over the weekend.
But personally, people listen to this podcast, as you're listening to it now, but our level of following is minuscule, and nobody ever really has recognized any of us outside of the podcast. There's a few times people have heard of the stuff we did without meeting us, but for the most part, it's not much following. I don't know that I would be, if we were to somehow blow up at some point, that I would all be about signing autographs and taking pictures with strangers. And
I'd be okay with it, on a level of meeting people.
Yeah,
it depends on who your fans became. Then you might be all right, maybe I won't. But yeah, it seems like some of them genuinely really enjoy it and really like Bill Moseley's panel. He was talking about how he said he actually loves it because at home, obviously his wife and daughter aren't there talking oh, we love your movies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They don't give a shit. So he he says that he really does kind of enjoy coming out and talking to fans, and I can totally see that. And a lot of actors are the outgoing type. You know what I mean? Maybe not always some of the directors are, but you got to be outgoing to some level to direct people and be involved in that business. So, everybody there. It's rare to meet somebody who is not cool. That's one of the actors or somebody at the cons. But talked to Derek Mears about Twin Peaks. Tweeted about that a little bit. because he has an iconic scene in the new season where he arm wrestles Mr. C. And let's see, went to Bill Moseley panel.
Crow reunion panel.
Oh yeah, Crow. Yeah. We were gonna record that, so we don't have any recordings of it, but we live tweeted some. There was kind of a misunderstanding with being able to record them, so we won't have the recordings up like we did last year because we weren't able to actually shoot them. With the Ernie Hudson one too, live tweeted some of that one. That one was pretty cool. And then you were on the Independent Filmmakers panel along with PJ Starks, Brian Dorton. What's her name? The director of She Was So Pretty?
Brooklyn Ewing.
Okay, yeah.
And then
the writer of Headless. Did he write Plank Face too?
I don't think so. I think he's involved the Bandit Motion Pictures group that's made Plank Face and Harvest Lake. I was tagging like 50,000 things about it.
Yeah.
And I'm already forgetting.
And that one I did get to shoot because it wasn't, nobody else was in there shooting, so they didn't realize we were shooting it. They didn't care.
So it was Nathan Erdl, I don't know how to pronounce, and then Bobby Easley, and the panel was ran by Nathan Hamilton.
He did an awesome job, and he seemed pretty cool too.
And then, we'll have that panel posted soon. It was very interesting to hear the different discussion going on. Then we also screened some of our short films at the Louisville Gore Club's midnight screenings. They showed our shorts, and then after that showed Crazy Fat Ethel, which was directed by Brian Dorton, who was also on that panel. So
it was supposed to be a filmmaker spotlight on you, but they left the disc in the car, so we had one with the short I directed. So it just happened to be every short we have completed out right now.
So the shorts we showed were...
That was fun. I mean, we actually had the right
crowd.
audience for a lot of that stuff, including After the Slasher, which premiered, which isn't on the site yet. And then Thanksgiving Dinner is directed by Rob Zombie. It's hard to laugh at that too much. You can laugh at your friends because they're in it, but it's like, where does the laughter come from? Because I'm laughing at Corey and Derek especially. Because I know what happened on set and everything, so it was great to see like a pretty big reaction for that. That was tons of fun. And then after that, they screened Crazy Fat Ethel, which was directed by Brian Dorton and his remake of
Criminally Insane.
Criminally Insane, yeah. Another locally produced film. We were like extras in a scene of it as well too. I enjoyed it. Like, some of it is your standard slasher fare, and that is right up the alley of maybe some of the audience for that film. And some of it has some very funny, just kind of dialogue that is almost like naturalistic in an endearing way of kind of like small town, I don't know, just common people and two older ladies that like I just love their scenes together. I wish there was more, and I think that was like really the strongest point in that film. Just because, I don't know, it's when you see a film from certain directors and you hear certain dialogue and it just feels right. And it feels like personal. And that's how that felt. That feels like plenty of people that I've known and talked to around here and in our area of, being in Kentucky. Great job on that for being such a low budget production, and he secured the remake rights to it. And he talked about how he got that in the filmmakers panel, which is really fascinating because it was, I don't want to say no budget because I don't know, but a very minimal crew with that. This wasn't a large production.
When we were there for the scene, we were extras. It was shot at a local bar, Seidenfaden's, which is where the Louisville Gore Club has their screenings, which, if you're not aware what that is, so if you're in Louisville, Kentucky, every Sunday at Seidenfaden's, which is a bar, kind of in the Highlands, Barrett Avenue area, they will screen different movies. They'll have themed nights. They'll show TV shows like The Walking Dead or things like that. So, just kind of genre movies. And like I said, they run it every weekend. They have different themes. And they're the ones who did the midnight screening.
And Athena and Steve Vessel are the ones that kind of put that on for you. And then they were also in that film as well. Yeah,
and we were the extras, at least like in terms of what they were shooting with. They're shooting with like a small DSLR camera with like an on-camera shotgun mic, not much lighting rig or anything like that.
It was really the director and the camera operator / DP, right? Was that
Yeah, there
basically
may have
the only
been
crew?
somebody else running the slate, maybe. I
Yeah.
don't remember, but like
There's like 3 people,
a
you know.
crew that's
so-
about the size of the one we use.
Yeah.
Because like on the last 3 short films, so after the slasher, after slasher Windows and Plucked, which is still in the editing process, the crew was really only 3 for all those. So we've been shooting with a pretty small crew. So it's with a lot of these, like the way the budget levels work is anything under $1 million is kind of considered like a micro budget film, and then anything under $500,000 is a really micro budget film, and then anything under $100,000 is a super super low budget film, and anything under 10 is no budget. Because most time when you have a movie that is under $10,000, all your money's going to food, it's going to costuming, it's going to effects, and that's usually what most of the money gets spent on. Almost nobody gets paid, or if they do, it's simply like travel costs or things like that. So a lot of the movies, it's like would you say like excluding like quality, whatever, would you say it's in the same range as like Volumes of Blood and Wicked One, or
So
a little bit
the
less
Wicked,
money on screen?
the Wicked one felt a little bit more polished and everything. Granted, they shot on a Blackmagic camera. You know what I mean? So I think the Wicked one would be more easily digestible to a slightly broader audience, but again, and I think the Wicked one has like a simplistic but endearing story that I like a lot. And in Volumes of Blood, it has a lot of money on screen for effects. The visual quality is maybe a step down from Wicked one, because of the camera and the equipment used and stuff like that. And this is visual quality is it's they didn't focus on a lot of complicated lighting setups or anything like that, but it all looks good. You can see everything. The audio quality is super clear, and like for a lot of like super no budget or low budget productions, that's a hurdle to get over, for a lot of people anyway. So
because the audio is, you can watch the independent filmmakers panel discussion, but like when it comes to independent film, I think we've even talked about it amongst ourselves. Like I think the most important things people need to focus on are the script, so the story and the characters, and then the acting, the performances. So if you don't have a good story and characters, nothing else matters to a great extent, because people are gonna have a hard time watching. So if you have those, you have good acting, and then you start worrying about technical stuff. So then after the story and script and plot and characters and then the actors, then you worry about the audio quality. Can you hear it? Is it clear? Then after you worry about the audio quality, then you worry about the lighting. Is it lit? Can you see things? And then after those basics are knocked out, then it goes into the more detailed cinematography and lighting kits and technical aspects. I think a lot of people get caught up on those technical aspects and don't care as much about the story and acting. And then a lot of people worry about story and acting and don't care anything about the audio or the lighting. So as long as they hit those basics, then you're good to go and you can watch it.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it is a slasher film. Some of it devolves into a series of kills, and you kind of watch that for a while. But there's one specific kill I told you about.
Yeah.
It was really horrific and cringeworthy. So it's not like they're just lazy kill after kill or something like that. But yeah, there's some really funny moments in it, and that's the intent of those moments. So, if you're interested in independent horror films that it's like a lower budget, absolutely check it out, because it's always interesting to see what people do. And this is not like a total bust or anything like that at all. Like some films, just some films are. You feel like you get nothing out of it.
If you go to Amazon Prime, there are a ton of independent horror films on there, because it doesn't cost you anything to submit your film. You just need to have a closed captioning file. So as long as you have that, you can submit anything. And there are a lot of films on there that I would categorize just garbage. They have bad writing, bad characters, terrible acting. The audio's bad. It's too dark. And it's just unwatchable. So I'm really glad to see more local stuff being made on budget levels similar to what we would be dealing with. They're turning out well and are watchable and things of interest.
And full disclosure too, like Brian Dorton, I think I've been Facebook friends with him for a long time now. Didn't know him personally, talked to him at this fest a little bit. I've seen him around. We were extras in it, but didn't actually talk to him. So I'm not like reviewing it from any sort of like hard critical point.
Yeah.
And so maybe some of my views are shaded the fact that it's somebody locally. He seems like a really awesome guy.
Yeah.
And like I want this to be good, and maybe I'm just more vested in it. That's why I think I'm more interested in than maybe somebody else. But it's their account is Crazy Fat Ethel on Facebook, or at Crazy Fat Ethel 2016 if you're like searching on Facebook. And they don't have a release date yet. He's just said follow them on Facebook or whatever to figure out to keep up when that's coming out. But a weird, unexpected film that you think would come out in 2017, a film that is actually about somebody who is very fat, as in the title. You know, a larger person that is so mad and angry about wanting to eat that they kill people so they can continue to eat. So very un-PC. So that, that gives it some sort of edge. It's like, okay, let's see what they do here. And they don't really make a commentary or anything like that. Like, there's nothing deep, but it's not really like too many things I've seen aside from some of the parts that devolve into it. But just that hook of being somebody that's doing this for the lust of food is kind of funny. Because also, too, it's not like, oh, it's a bigger person, so they're whatever. Honestly, it's like something she's done, like, okay, I obsessed about food sometimes. You know what I mean? Sometimes I'm like, I just need to eat whatever. So it's like, I didn't see us as far as like making fun or mocking. It was almost like, oh yeah, I'm also like that sometimes where I just gotta freaking eat. So that was one part that I also kind of appreciate, that there wasn't like any super mockery of anybody's weight or anything like that. Yeah. But yeah, definitely look into that if you're interested in independent films. Yeah, and then like I said, from the other people in the panel, so She Was So Pretty, you can rent on Vimeo for $1 currently, or 99 cents. And their sequel, She Was So Pretty, for goodness sake, or something like that. They're finishing that up, and it's a sequel that's set around Christmas time, so that'll be coming out sometime soon. Volumes of Blood, you can watch the first one on Amazon Prime. You can buy the second one, Volumes of Blood Horror Stories, from Best Buy, Walmart, deep discount DVD. You can just search for Volumes of Blood Horror Story. And online, Blu-ray. I don't think in stores. Yeah, online. And then I know it's going to be hitting video on demand in the next month, sometime during September. So we'll share the links for that when that comes out. Like I said, the other movie, Headless, that Nathan worked on, I'm not sure. I guess you can buy that on disc currently. And then we need to check out their stuff, because I haven't seen any of that cruise stuff really. Yeah, I've seen like different people. I think there's like different people that work on like DP and director. I've seen Harvest Lake, which has was directed. So there's so that film. Bobby, I need to go back and look and see what his films were, because I hadn't seen any of them. He lives in Indiana, right? Yeah, I think it's in Indiana or Indianapolis, somewhere in the region. So, independent filmmakers that are, in the same, well, I don't even want to say the same range as us, we haven't made a feature, but, people out there who are operating on not huge budget levels and getting out content that, is at least reaching somewhat of an audience or having some impact out there. They're getting it done themselves and building their own names and their own path, as far as, you know what I mean? Kind of just putting the work in. Because, like, when we've done our stuff, our short films, it's, self-financed. The money's just coming out of our pockets. In terms of getting actors or whatever, like, we are the producers, and so, we have to secure the locations we're going to use. A producer. You have to pick out the location you're going to use. You have to reach out to the actors you want to be involved, and you have to do everything yourself. You have to get food. You have to get costumes. You have to get props. A lot of the props that we've used for short films, at least like the ones I directed, I bought a bunch of stuff off Amazon. For After the Slasher, I bought police badges from Amazon, a fake security camera from Amazon. I bought some stuff from like Walmart or Target, because we shot in a room that had red carpet, and it was bouncing like a red hue on the walls. So I had to go buy some black bed sheets, because it was the cheapest cloth I could find that would cover the space. And then just put those on the floor so it wouldn't reflect. It would just, the light would sink into the black and not reflect up, because otherwise all the walls had like a pink hue from the red carpet. So, there's just things like that. When you do an independent film with no support, you got to do it all yourself. And like, luckily we did that 48-hour film as our first one, where people were on our team who were good actors. Shelby, who's been in a few of our short films.
Tim Gooch has been in a bunch of stuff. He's been on different TV shows before. So we had, we got lucky, and Nigel, who was in it and did music for us. So we got lucky and got good talent, and then that project turned out pretty well. At least well enough that other people we reached out to for Hazard were interested in working with us because it didn't look terrible. It was fun. It was.
And then it got me Volumes of Blood. I assume,
Yeah.
that was
Because
the only thing I had done, really.
Because it won the 48-hour film fest. So if you want to get into filmmaking, those aren't a bad idea of a way to start, because it gets a little bit of fire under your ass because you have to do it. I mean, it could turn out to be a complete disaster, but it can also, get something that's a relatively fun short that you spent a weekend on, and then it's done, and it's good for networking. When you go and you screen them, like, somebody's going to watch it. If you submit it, it will be watched.
True.
And then you can meet other people to branch out and work with on your own projects. That's a good way to start out. Or just, we did that Thanksgiving dinner video, mostly with just our friends, not mostly, it was with our friends.
Yeah.
So not actors. And that has been the video we've made that's gotten the most views overall. And that was shot in one day, in about 8 hours, and I edited it in about a week and got it turned out. And the total budget for everything, including an inflatable turkey and Salvation Army shirts and stuff, was probably like $60-$70, including everybody's money spent. So you can make something like that and it blow up. It's just, spend time writing it, spend time on the characters, and, if you don't have any actors to work with, you can use your friends just because just to get it made. But if you're actually wanting to get something out there in the world, try to get people who are good for the roles and who are good actors. And don't just put your friends, as we continue to make larger projects, we would not put people in them just because we know them.
Yeah.
We would go for people who we think are going to be good for the roles.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if you have terrible acting, it will show through. And it's all subjective. But, yeah, so independent filmmaking.
But when Derek takes 20 takes to say, well, guess we can eat ham.
Yeah.
Then okay, we need a good actor.
Yeah, so you can listen when that panel is available. You can listen to that and see what other people had to say. It's always just a fascinating subject to see how other people approach, indie projects. Most people there are working on features and not really shorts.
Yeah, I think they're all past that point now.
But we, at least I think, have done something pretty good in making multiple shorts and figuring out shooting styles that are quick, that let us get what we need, and figuring out okay, what's worth the time and effort to use, what's not. So that when we actually shoot a feature, we have a pretty good idea of how to get shots knocked out on time. And because a lot of stuff gimbals or stabilizers are nice, or, dolly shots, a lot of stuff looks nice, but is it worth the effort and the amount of slowdown it takes to shoot a scene? Because, so it's all just, give and take. We made a bunch of different shorts trying to get prepared to make a feature. So hopefully when we do, we can make it on tight timelines with no money. Because that's what we're likely
That's
gonna
where
have.
we're at, yeah.
But, so that panel will be up soon.
Anything else about Days of the Dead that was big? We skipped that on the party this year. Was that pretty much it then? With Days, probably?
Stuff we could talk about. We had, some different conversations with people about stuff that really would be interest to.
Yeah, we met a lot of friends like normal and
Yeah.
got to see a lot of people. And
it is always slightly surreal to be in a room. You're like, oh, there's Bill Moseley and there's Sid Haig and oh, there's Gary Busey and
yeah, I got to talk to Linda Blair for a minute because a friend of mine I used to work with is
I got to shake Linda Blair's
Yeah.
hand.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because we were there without you. Then we came back and you were there when we got to meet her.
And then you see, oh, there's Ernie Hudson over there and there's Tony Todd. So you
Yeah.
see all these actors. It's a little bit surreal. But then we go and get lunch at the restaurant in the hotel that it was hosted at. And you see Ernie Hudson sitting over at a table eating lunch. And it's
and Derek Mears in there. And two, who else did we see?
I think Tony Todd came in there too.
Yeah, when you guys got there, I was in a room watching the Big Daddy zombie from Land of the Dead, speaking of Land of the Dead, get makeup put on him.
Yeah.
And he was just telling a lot of stories about anything and everything, including relationship stuff. Nobody was asking him questions, so he was just talking. He was being an entertainer. So, but yeah, whoever was doing the makeup on him was awesome. She was just throwing it on super fast, and it looked so good, so quick.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a fun time as always. Hopefully next year we'll get to shoot the panels.
Yeah.
We're gonna try to work that out. I'm not for sure.
Yeah, next year, we'll see about maybe getting a table there next year. Because hopefully, it's a lot of freaking work, and we haven't really even got a script for anything yet. But if we could have a feature done in time for that, that'd be amazing.
Or in production or in pre-production to kind of promote it.
Because when we have when the short Plucked is done, we'll have about 30 minutes of content in terms of short films. So and I don't know, like if we're gonna do that many shorts, if we're actually wanting to work on a feature, 'cause it seems like using resources out that could be used for other things. But
Yeah, unless somebody's working on a feature and other people are doing shorts, like Chad. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Maybe Chad still wants to do a couple different shorts. So,
yeah,
who
we'll have to
knows?
wait and see. And like you said, Sean may have been a kid, so that's a huge project.
Yeah.
That takes a number of years to complete. But yeah, so we'll see if what we have going on next year at that con, and going to other ones, like there's Horror Hound and there's other Days of the Dead, and there's other ones in the region we may or may not go to. Just like we don't really have much to sell, because we gave away some disc that had our short films on it, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, the Days of the Dead.
Let
is
us know
always
if you
fun.
found the flyers there or you got those discs, and that's why you're listening to this
If
podcast.
anybody is
too.
listening to this podcast as a result of watching our short films
Or the
seeing
panel.
or any of that stuff, let us know, because that would be cool. But Days of the Dead is always a good time, and since it's been at Louisville, it's the second year. Seems like a good show with a good turnout, a lot of people there.
well run and everything.
Yeah.
Missed a couple panels because of some scheduling stuff. Some times got changed,
It seems
but
like those,
for the most part,
it seems like those Sunday panels always get shifted around.
Yeah,
some.
yeah, but yeah, it's a great time as always. Looking forward to next year already.
Yeah. Oh, so I guess too, like to circle back when we start talking about Tobe Hooper passing away. Texas Chainsaw Massacre stuff, of course, is what people know him for. But he also directed that one episode of the Freddy's Nightmare TV series.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of the origin story of Freddy Krueger. Then I heard some other stuff about like the Poltergeist thing with like Spielberg and how they got broken up, and the other things Tobe Hooper directed, like the Funhouse and other things. So
I love Texas Chainsaw 2.
yeah,
I mean, I like Texas Chainsaw 1, obviously. As a kid, the room with all the bones and everything,
Yeah.
that stuck in my mind more than anything else, because I just thought about, like, imagine being in that room in that old, like, creepy, farmhouse, just, not wanting to touch anything. Like, I that was, like, amazing as a kid, and I really like that. It's not, like, it's not my top 3 horror films of all time, but it's definitely very effective. Now, the beginning of it is a little hokey with some of the acting and everything like that, I think. I know some people it's probably untouchable too, and I totally get that. But 2, I don't know what it is. What it is about sequels. I love Nightmare on Elm Street 2. That was on today. I think I just like the more, I don't know, when they kind of turn things on their head, because a lot of things really aren't that scary. And especially with the second ones, like, it's hard to make it scary again. So I love what they did with Nightmare on Elm Street 2, and then Texas Chainsaw 2.
Yeah.
Like, I love that film. I really love Texas
I heard
Chainsaw
this
2.
interview recently or a discussion where somebody that knew Tobe Hooper said that he said Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1 was a comedy too, just nobody got the comedy.
Yeah.
So he made it more overt in the second one, which is one of those like the canon film era version.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. Tobe Hooper is one of the, there's like a pantheon of directors who kind of made horror what it is today to the virtue of making films that are successful.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course you have like Tobe Hooper, John Carpenter, Wes Craven, Sam Raimi, Bob Clark with Black Christmas.
Well, it's really the modern era of horror, that hit late 60s maybe or 70s, not including any of the Italian stuff. I mean, Bava and all them, but like the American horror directors, like this is the first, what I consider the first major
George
wave,
Romero.
the first major wave of horror masters. You had Hitchcock that did some horror stuff in that vein, and plenty of other films, but kind of the modern era of people that are alive now that grew up with these films as being new films, like this is them. This is like this wave of horror masters passing away, and everybody always talks who's the new set of horror masters, and there won't be anybody. There won't be a group that matches them again, because it was kind of the first major wave of horror, I think.
Well, and horror too has become so diverse and so splintered that James Wan has made a bunch of big horror films.
Yeah.
And you have other people like that, but he's also making Aquaman now for DC. So
And his don't strike the same chord with me as those other ones too.
Yeah,
and for some people they do though, and maybe that's just how it is. Maybe like we will just be having an affinity for that generation.
A lot of people wanted to dub like smaller indie directors as masters of horror, and it's like, well, they don't have that big of a filmography yet. And even though the horror fans love some of those movies, they're not mainstream movies that people are aware of. Like Halloween and Texas Chainsaw Massacre and a lot of those movies were huge hits that made a ton of money that everybody was aware of.
And they sent shockwaves throughout the industry. That's the big thing.
Because,
it's like now, what is sending shockwaves? It's really hard to send a shockwave out now.
Because Night of the Living Dead changed, a lot of things with George Romero. You've had movies like Paranormal Activity and like a few things here or there that did huge business, but they didn't really fundamentally change the landscape of filmmaking, and that, the directors aren't household names, it's those properties. So, yeah, but with Tobe Hooper passing away, that's very sad, but you can go check some of his movies out, go back through his filmography, expand out beyond just the Texas Chainsaw Massacre films, because there's other stuff out there, like The Funhouse is one I'd recommend watching. Just kind of, even though it's called Funhouse, it is just kind of a fun, kind of cheesy movie from that era that doesn't really get talked about a ton. I did a video on it a few years back, so you go check out that movie, or some of the other stuff he's directed. Trying to think, there's also the trailer for the new Insidious film is out.
Yeah.
Insidious Chapter 4.
What'd you think about that?
I didn't watch most of the trailer. I just saw a bit of it, because most of the time, like, we're going to see it for the podcast because we enjoy the other ones. So a lot of times I just try to avoid some of the marketing material.
I thought it looked fine. Some of the music cues were, and maybe it's like the signature music cues of that series, but I almost felt like it's almost becoming a little rote at this time.
Yeah.
And it could be that, but it almost just feels like it just kind of blends because of a lot of the same styles of some of those films. And again, I loved part 3,
Yeah. Because part 1 was good. Part 2 is the one that's a lot more controversial. And, kind of overwrites some of part 1. It's not my favorite. Part 3 I thought was strong, and it really, it didn't bring back the Patrick Wilson character and the Rose Byrne character and like all the kind of baggage of that. Just kind of dealt with, the Lynn Shay character in a prequel setting. So,
And Lynn Shay's back in this one, which I like her. I like where the story seemed like it's going with this.
Yeah.
Watching the trailer, I was like, okay, that's cool. But we don't know where it's different directors, so who knows how this is going to end up. We'll see it for sure. But one of the images of the poster looks like the house, the movie House and House 2. It looks like that almost. And what is it called? Like Insidious 4, The Last Key or something?
It's Insidious, The Last Key.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's like meaning the last key to some mystery or what, or, they're not calling it the final chapter. But maybe it's supposed to be kind of a final chapter. But, when you say the last key instead of final chapter, they can keep going if they really want to.
Well,
but Lynn Shay's character's they might be closing up that story.
As long as the movies make money, they'll continue to get made.
Yeah.
Another movie with sequel news. So Creep 2 is the sequel to the found footage film Creep, which you can watch on Netflix. They have Mark Duplass in it. It'll be hitting digital platforms October 24th. I don't think there's a trailer or much information known about it. The cast isn't that big, and I'm assuming it's another documentary-style found footage type film. But be interested to see that and see where they go with that concept.
First one was interesting. I'd watch a second one.
And I think that was kind of all the news we're going to talk about, and we can move into the things we've been watching. So the Twin Peaks video, you can go check that out for our thoughts on the Twin Peaks, The Return season finale.
Basic thoughts. Give me like
it's so it's nothing like you haven't seen.
You can give me the whole series thoughts too if you want.
You haven't seen anything else on TV like this. With the David Lynch thing, the thing I'd say is if you love Twin Peaks the original series, but you hate all the movies David Lynch has made in the 90s on, so Mulholland Drive, Lost Highway, Inland Empire, Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. If you don't like Fire Walk with Me, you're probably not going to like the show. If you don't like his movies after, Twin Peaks, his more obscure metaphorical films where it's there's not necessarily defined plots as much as is storytelling device. If you don't like all those or think that movies or TV are art, then the show will probably lose you because it's not a super straightforward narrative. I mean, it has a lot of straightforward narrative parts, but it's also very surreal and metaphorical and mood and feeling more so than plot points. So I really enjoyed the season. I need to watch it again to see how it sits after all of it's done. I mean, to me, I got more closure out of it than I did out of the season 2 finale of the original Twin Peaks. Because I think this one's a little bit more pointed and it wasn't, intended to be a cliffhanger for another season to get made. It was more of, a story from getting to end that was told with supplemental material around it with a couple of books and what have you. So I really enjoyed it, and you haven't seen anything else like this on TV. And, it had like one moment and it delivered one moment that was like more of like a stand up and like, cheer moment than it was anything else I've seen. And now they may or may not undercut that with other stuff in the show because it's Lynch, but the show itself is something that, anybody who has any interest in it should be watching it so you don't get spoiled. Yeah. Granted, there's a lot of stuff that's hard to spoil, but you don't want to have elements of it ruined for you.
Well, as somebody said, most TV shows you can do, or movies, you can do a spoiler in one sentence.
Yeah.
For this, you need like a 3,000-page PowerPoint and a huge dissertation and a 90-minute breakdown along with that. For me, like, very high on this series as I was watching it. Didn't know how it would shake out, but I thought no matter how it shakes out, this will be very high marks for me. I'm not huge on TV. I drop off a lot of things. Even stuff that I found pretty good, like Breaking Bad. I haven't finished that. But for me, The Return, I like it better than even the original series. I love Fire Walk with Me. I think that's a very solid experience. But The Return is my favorite TV series. Twin Peaks: The Return. Of all time, I don't see anything topping this experience with this as far as just kind of the mystery of it, going along, talking with people, or, doing our discussion videos on it.
Reading the comments
and theories. Articles. Like, the experience to get from all that, I don't think anything else could ever match that. And my previous love for it from watching it, maybe 10 years ago or whenever you basically turned me on to it. So, and really haven't had that experience with the movie either, because Lynch was calling it an 18-hour movie. I think this is my favorite experience of any movie and TV show. Yeah. That's all I can say about it. But it very much is defined by specific taste. And I like Lynch's filmography, so, but yeah, my favorite thing ever. So,
so a big recommend from us.
We just haven't talked about it much because we've been doing those videos and we figured,
separate it out so we're not spending time because you don't want to get anything spoiled. I guess true, kind of going through the other stuff. The Game of Thrones season finale. Much different than Twin Peaks in that it feels like they speed through a lot of material and don't really there was a few things where it kind of ruminated and kind of lived in the moment in conversations and just people talking, but a lot of it was moving plot points very, very quickly. It's kind of a messy season from the kind of abandoning a lot of what people liked about the show to begin with in terms of setting up all these pieces on the field, and this just felt like they're almost had the fast forward button on through most of it, which, may be balanced out in the final season when it all ends and been a good choice because they get to the real meat of the story with the remaining episodes and they need to get all the place setting done. Yeah. But, until you see the entirety of the show, it's kind of hard to judge. But I think most people agree that, this season is not the best season of the show by far. And it just kind of glided through a lot of plot points. Yeah, and stretched plausibility a little bit.
It was shorter, but it felt very brief also. So it's hard to make this a favorite one at all because it just felt like it was over as soon as it began. Yeah. Unfortunately, it had some really enjoyable moments, and you already got some character building. But I watched it. I kept up with it. Yeah. Especially because I know there's only one more season, but that is a show also I kept up with, and I enjoyed it. But yeah, I watched that, and then I watched episode 16 of Twin Peaks. Yeah. And it's 16 was 2 episodes removed from the actual finale, and that was way more stunning than the finale of Game of Thrones. Almost any episode of Twin Peaks this season was better than that
Game of
last
Thrones,
episode of Game of Thrones.
It wasn't the last season.
Yeah.
It did a lot of things already happened, and you just saw more plot development that set up
But they've had some
clashes.
really good season finales, and the
Well,
season
yeah.
finale was fine, but it wasn't anything like.
It was mostly just like, setting pieces on the board. So
I saw a meme that it was one of the major scenes from that finale involving the wall.
Yeah.
And everybody's it's like people just sitting there watching it. And then the other was that big scene from Twin Peaks, the
Yeah.
cheering moment. And everybody's like, and it's literally just like one line. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, that's the difference between the shows. Like, it's just,
Well, 'cause
you're
you, like-
desensitized to, I don't know, it's just the way they set up some of the things.
Yeah.
It made it not be that satisfying
Well, it felt like, having read all the books were, very much plotting and almost like too slow at times. But the show kind of streamlined some of those elements and kept most of, what made the books great intact. And then it feels like without the books to guide them, they've kind of just gone off the rails a little bit. And not that the show is bad, it's just that it's not the same show that it was 3 seasons ago.
Yeah. I still enjoyed watching it this season.
Yeah, I still watch it.
Yeah.
I'm still glued to the TV, but
Yeah.
it's the oomph isn't necessarily there in the way it was for Twin Peaks or some of the other things.
Yeah, and I'm not as down on it as some people. Some people have been really down on it.
I still enjoy it.
Yeah,
I still
too.
watch. I still look forward to watching every week.
Yeah.
It's just I think that like season 4 was like great TV, and I think now it's good TV.
Yeah.
It could be great again, depending on this.
And
last
like you
season
said, it
works.
may be a good decision based on the time they have to tell the rest of the story. Do you watch anything else?
Nope.
Yep. Too busy making DVDs for Days of the Dead.
Yeah, I was burning a bunch of DVDs.
So I watched Black Swan. Finally, been wanting to watch that again. Darren Aronofsky's, Natalie Portman, Mila Kunis, Winona Ryder. I hadn't really seen this since I saw it in theaters, and I absolutely loved it at the time. Just never came to streaming services. Finally got a copy. I really do think it's probably one of my favorite horror films of like maybe the past decade. Like it's up there, probably top 10 for sure, and maybe top 5. And it's not even a perfect film, but I just really love a lot about it. And I think I do like the grounded feel of it, but it also has some more surreal elements to it. Again, it's a kind of Lynchian in that way. I don't want to throw around that term too much, but the fact that it kind of has some unsettling moments of reality, and the female character I think has done very well, Natalie Portman's character, and kind of her obsession of perfection and stuff. And like, my wife doesn't have an obsession with perfection, but she always tries very hard, and it upsets her when she doesn't hitting 100%. So it's like it feels like a very real character in that regard. So I'm excited for Mother too. Mother looks good. I'm totally on board for it, but Black Swan, even from the first trailer, I was like really excited for that, and I think that film is amazing. Did you ever see that? Did you ever check that out?
Yeah, I saw.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched it back when it came out. In
Yeah,
theaters.
see, I only saw it when it came out in theaters too, and I just never got around to watching it again because I kept waiting for it to hit a streaming service.
Yeah.
And I never rented it because I always just wanted to buy it, and I finally did. And then Little Evil from the director of Tucker and Dale vs. Evil. It's on Netflix now. I won't talk too much about it. I'm not hearing a lot of buzz about it, and that's probably for good reason.
Well, I saw the trailer and I was interested in seeing it. I watched like the first 20 minutes and fell asleep, not because of the quality of the movie necessarily, just because I was super tired. And it was after, I think it was Saturday night, or Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
No, yeah, it was Saturday. After I got done watching like college football games, because it was the first weekend, I tried to watch it before I went to bed, and I was just too tired, and then I didn't have time the rest of the weekend to finish it.
Yeah,
so.
it's not too bad. It's probably worth watching just because it's on Netflix. So the humor, I thought Tucker and Dale vs. Evil was great tone. I
Yeah.
feel like that was very solid throughout. This, I actually had to check and was like, is there a different writer on this?
Yeah.
Did I hear this wrong? Is it the same writer and a different director? It's same director, and the director is also the writer. Tucker and Dale, I guess there was another writer on or something. So
Well, something that the Little Evil did, the parts that I watched, that I also had huge issues with Joe Dante's Bearing the X, was the music. Was that very generic,
yeah.
instrumental music that just felt very very generic, very low budget, very cheap music that really took me out of it. Because when Burying the X, whenever we talked about that, like I really took issue with that music. I think I even like played some of it, and I was like, when I listened to this, I thought of like
it just breaks your experience from the film. You know?
Almost no score would be better in some cases, but
it also does. You know, it also does starts out towards the end of the movie, or
it's
not even the very end, thankfully, but it starts out and then it goes back like, oh, this much time later. And I just watched another film this week too, and I can't remember what it was, and I didn't write it down, but it also did that too. And that kind of, at this point, I'm kind of tired of that device, because it just feels like, oh, we don't have a good opening.
Well, a lot of movies, like even like Don't Breathe, the movie that I like, did that.
Yeah.
And it's like I almost prefer that it doesn't do that, because then it almost spoils some of.
Yeah, and I feel like it's just it's overused, and it almost feels a little lazy, because it's like, okay, you can't write a good opening to your film. I understand if you want to jump into the action, but can you find out something else interesting, even if you have to build up to it? And horror films do this a lot, because they want to get in to some of the action or show you some gore and then reset. Horror films do this all the time.
Hazard did that, the short film, but we weren't showing the end. It started like with an out of context beat.
Yeah, no, I didn't start at the end or anything.
No,
like
but
that.
like it was, but like having like
you had the action though, but you set up story wise. You know what I mean? For story wise, you started out with an action beat and then went into it, and it was in linear fashion. And I think it would have been kind of fine in a short, but like for a feature film, it's like
so jumping to the end robs the movie of a lot of stuff a lot of times.
Yeah, and it just feels like, okay, you
shortcut.
couldn't make the opening more interesting. You just had to take a clip from the end and put it in the beginning.
Well, because Tucker and Dale versus Evil kind of did the same thing, though, with like the news reporter section.
Yeah.
But that was a little bit more obscure and out of context. Yeah. But like when you see like, you know, the lead character, Adam Scott, like in there, then...
It opens up with him in a coffin.
It's different than an out of context bit where you have to find out what it means later.
Yeah, so... it was okay. You know, I laughed at some parts. It's essentially like The Omen a little bit.
Yeah.
But, and I almost thought it was going down one path that I really would have thought there would have been a lot to mine from it there. But it's really a story about being a stepfather or a step-parent. So I thought that was pretty cool that there's like something to hinge on to kind of discuss and kind of mine a little bit. But yeah, I just thought it was all right. Everybody in it does a pretty damn good job, but just nothing stellar. Like nothing I wouldn't flat out recommend this to anybody.
Well, I think it's kind of the double-edged sword of Netflix doing releasing original content, and that they can make a lot of movies that wouldn't get made otherwise, but sometimes they make ones that feel just kind of slight because they don't have like a ton of budget behind them, or it feels more like...
The budget felt bigger than Tucker and Dale vs. Evil.
Yeah.
It just felt like some of the... I don't know, the script just didn't have enough polish on it, I don't think, really.
Yeah, I mean, like, a lot of people involved, like Evangel and Lilly and Adam Scott, and you know, like the director, everybody, like, people whose, you know, work I'm interested in seeing. Just the portion of I watched didn't really grab me. I'll go back and finish it at some point. I just didn't have time with the
and I mean, it's on Netflix, so it's low investment. You know, it's really all your extra money, you know, no extra money, and your time is only an hour and a half. So if you're interested in just keeping up with his filmography, you can. But, you know, if his next film is released in theaters, I'll look closely at the reviews before jumping to go see it.
Yeah.
You know,
it wasn't a rip-roaring follow-up from the director of like a beloved cult classic.
And it wasn't a total flat experience either. Like I liked some of it.
Just a decent watch if it's on Netflix and you want to. Was everything you watched?
Yeah, pretty much. You know, I watched some other little stuff, but nothing. We can move on because time is limited.
We'll move into our discussion now of In the Mouth of Madness, the 1994 film from John Carpenter that starred Sam Neill. So in the same era that he was in Jurassic Park, he was also in this. And then a few years later, around the same era, Event Horizon, which is kind of interesting to think about the fact he's in like one of the biggest movies of all time. And then this like lower budget John Carpenter horror film. And then the Paul W.S. Anderson sci-fi horror film. And very different role in this than, you know, Jurassic Park or, you know, what have you. Basic plot synopsis. An insurance investigator begins discovering that the impact a horror writer's books have on his fans is more than inspirational. So I guess we'll kind of do full spoilers throughout because it's from '94. So if you haven't checked it out, you can go do that.
We're sorry it was on Hulu to watch, but expired already. That's how we
Yeah,
did
maybe
it.
on some other streaming service, but I don't remember.
So, what do you think about, like, just straight off, what do you think about this film? Have you seen it before?
I had seen bits, but I had
Yeah.
not watched all of it because, like, Prince of Darkness.
I love that film.
In the Mouth
At
of
least I did last time I
Madness.
watched it.
So there's like, to me, there's like tier 1 Carpenter, which is, The Thing, Halloween, Escape from New York,
Big Trouble.
like Big Trouble in Little China, Assault on Precinct 13. So it's kind of like A level. There's kind of like B level, which is like The Fog, like Prince of Darkness, then like this, and then there's kind of like the C tier, which is like Ghost of Mars.
What about John Carpenter's Vampires?
John Carpenter's Vampires. It teeters.
I really like that film for what it was. Like, I'd give it.
Cheryl Lee.
Yeah, I'd give it like a B minus.
Well, I
level.
think it's kind of like
Or B.
it's maybe more of like for me it fluctuates tier 2 to tier 3.
Yeah.
Because it's nowhere near like your Halloween and Escape from New York, but it's not. Most of his movies are enjoyable in some fashion. Like Ghost of Mars is one where I know there's like some interference from studio stuff and what have you. The Ward I have not watched all the way through, so that kind of gets thrown out. But I mean, with this movie, I overall found it to be entertaining. It was definitely different than the other movies he's done.
That's why I kind of one, it was expiring, but two, like maybe after watching it once, it was like less entertaining now. But that's why I wanted to cover it because it was very different than kind of the ones he's done. It's more surreal.
Yeah.
I almost felt like it's like almost like if he did like a Phantasm sequel.
Oh yeah.
When they start getting to the weird stuff and they're already kind of in it, like
Yeah.
that he kind of really is. The reins are off. There's nothing constricting him to reality in this
Yeah.
film, and I like to see Carpenter go down that direction. It's
Yeah.
not just reality with some monsters in there.
Yeah, because Sam Neill's character, and Charlton Heston's in this too, and I saw him, I was like, oh wait, he's in this. But Sam Neill's character goes to this town to look into the disappearance of the writer because they had done like a publicity stunt, but like him actually missing wasn't part of the plan, and some things that are going on, and he gets sent to town with somebody from his publisher's office or company,
Yeah.
and what was her name? Linda.
So basically, he discovers where this town is a real place, and it's somewhere. Is it Ohio?
I don't remember.
I don't remember. Anyway,
It's kind of like a smaller town that's like kind of like with Stephen King, like Castle Rock, like everything in his books take place here.
Yeah.
So in this universe, the Sutter Kane, the writer, has like a fictional town.
And they're saying, "Oh, it doesn't exist," and he says, "Oh, yes, it does." And then, when she's driving, they kind of travel through time and space or something.
Yeah.
There's something supernatural going on.
Or extra dimensional.
Yeah, extra dimensional, and they end up in this town, and in this town, anything goes, basically.
Yeah, and then like so Sutter Kane is having like an influence on the world and changing things, but then like it's not necessarily clear how that exactly works.
Yeah, he's a character in the town.
Yeah, and it's kind of Lovecraftian in some of the creatures you see and some of the elements of it. And
This is also the film that starts near the end.
yeah,
That's what I was thinking. I was like, there's another
Yes.
film that starts near the end, which is not as bad in this one too much.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, yeah, it's funny. Like that's like a device that's used a lot, and it depends on what it is. If you're showing like these fantastical elements out of context that you have to figure out how that fits in anything, that's a little bit different than seeing characters in a moment
Yeah.
with dialogue that you then backtrack and see how it got.
It didn't bother me in this because it was, I don't know, it was a little bit different. There was more story elements
like
going
really
on.
bad offenders or bad sitcoms or movies where it's a comedy. It's like, look at this situation. How'd I get here? Let's go back 1 week.
Yeah.
So that trope, like when it's done poorly, it sticks out. But when it's more obscure and you're just kind of getting flashes of things out of context, then it can work.
Mm-hmm.
And with this movie, it's definitely not Halloween or anything like that.
He basically is, by other people's eyes, he's crazy or he's in the insane asylum. And, you know, you already suspect, oh, maybe he really knows what's going on.
Yeah.
And then you kind of see where it gets to that point. And I think that's totally fine with that. Like,
Yeah.
I was okay with it, with the way it was handled in this. But
Well, too, because then you get to the element of unreliable narrator and things. So that adds a layer to it versus literally just showing you something, you know.
that's going to happen later. And it's exactly how it happens. You know, there's no reversal reveal or anything that changes your expectations of what you think is going to happen.
Because, I mean, like, some of my favorite things, like Breaking Bad, often would show you an out-of-context bit of story that you didn't know if it was in the past or in the future. And you didn't know if it was, like, a flashback to something that happened before. I mean, sometimes it made it clear as, like, flashbacks. Sometimes they would show you some out-of-context, like, somebody's face is all bruised and bloody, and then you see how it happens. Like, stuff like that I'm more okay with. You know, like, in this movie, there's more of, like, you know, you see, like, these... Well, you have him in the insane asylum, so you know that something happened to him, and then you find out what. Like, that's more okay to me. And
it's cool that he plays a skeptic so much in this film because
Yeah.
you know at some point he becomes convinced or whatever.
Yeah.
So I like that he is very skeptical and he's calling them on their BS and they're like, well, this was a stunt, but he went missing. I really like the kind of out there town that they're in and that kind of the chains are off and anything can happen. And there's like some awesome creature effects.
yeah.
I just really liked that it was a very, as you said, different John Carpenter film.
Then you had, like, the townspeople coming after, you know, Sam Neill's character and kind of like a time loop or you know, where he couldn't get out of town. Anytime he tried to drive out, he'd come back in. And so it was very, you know...
It was hard to kind of keep your feet on the ground through some of this film.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't super, you know, again, it wasn't Lynch where you're really messed up, but, you know, you kind of felt what the character felt a little bit when he felt helpless to a certain degree. He also thinks, like, people are actors, and I kind of love that, too.
Yeah.
He thinks everybody's acting, and...
Because when you think about a lot of these movies, like, when you're sitting there watching the movie, like, oh, come on, you gotta believe them.
Yeah.
But then in the real world, somebody's like, oh, this thing happened. You're like, I don't believe that.
Yes, yeah.
So you have to think, so, like, a lot of times movies, like, they'll strain, you know, believability a little bit, but then you think about it and you're like, oh, well, no, I actually would not believe that this, you know, all this stuff was happening. And, you know, Sam Neill is just a fun presence to see on screen.
Yeah.
Like I said, especially during the era like he was in, you know, Jurassic Park and other things. So, you know, that was back at kind of like the height of his career or the height of his visibility. And he's doing this movie, and regardless of what you think about it, like Event Horizon, like he's doing these, you know, horror movies after having been involved in one of the biggest blockbusters of all time, which is cool because you don't see that as often today.
Which is kind of a horror film, too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder what made him choose, you know, this and Event Horizon. Like, you know, I wonder...
Because John Carpenter had a pedigree at that point. Now, some of his movies hadn't been the biggest hits at the box office, but he had a pedigree and was a known quantity.
That's what I wonder if Sam Neill was a fan of his work. You know what I mean? Wonder
well,
if
he was in The Omen, or one of the Omen sequels.
Yeah.
So he was in the horror world before that.
I wonder if he's a horror fan, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to... didn't really do any research on interviews with him, but you would have to think, having been in, like, the Omen sequels, or one of the Omen sequels, was like the Omen 3 or 2.
remember.
He's in one of those sequels, and then he's in, you know, like in this.
I wonder if he's going to pop up in Thor, because he was in the, you know, the Hunt for the Wilder People.
Yeah.
With, directed by, what is his name?
Taika Waititi.
Yes, who's directing Thor.
Then,
because I love Sam Neill. And that's
there's also-
another reason why I like this film so much.
Have you seen The Tudors?
No.
He was good in that. It was about, you know, Anne Boleyn and King Henry VIII and all that stuff. Yeah, but the movie itself, like, to me, there's nothing in it that's, like, straight out scary. And there's not really, like, moments designed to go for scares. It's more of, like, I mean, there are, like, creatures and things. But to me, it almost feels in that same vein as, like, Hellraiser. More like Hellraiser 2.
Yeah.
So that kind of vein of, you know, there's creatures, and the fact that they're here is what's scary, and, you know, they're chasing these characters. So it feels to me kind of like that era of horror that was trying not to be a slasher and trying not to just be a repeat. It was more of like trying to open the floodgates to more like, you know, supernatural, ethereal.
Maybe that's what I like about it too, that it's not just, you know, some of the straightforward horror films that are a straightforward narrative or nothing super weird is going on, like a lot of times those aren't effectively scary for me personally. And it's like, even though this isn't effectively scary, at least there's something to think about and dots you're trying to connect, or you're trying, you are kind of invested in what's happening. Now this time around, it's been a long time since I watched it. I was on my phone a little bit, and I was a little more disconnected than I thought I was going to be this time.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just because, sometimes you watch films and there are assignments for this podcast. We've got to watch them under a certain time.
Yeah.
So you do fit them in when you can. But the first time I watched it, I was pretty high on it.
Yeah.
Not that I would put it anywhere near over Halloween or Escape from New York or A Big Trouble, but but it was a solid B.
Go above Village of the Damned.
Yeah.
Ghost of Mars.
But yeah, I still like the film, and I definitely think if you're a Carpenter fan and you haven't checked this out, you really should, because if you've already invested in kind of waiting to go to some of his deeper cuts, it's definitely one worth checking out.
And it's a Carpenter score, but it's less of the synth and more of the kind of 90s rock era. So, the score for this and like the score from Escape from LA is a little more like heavier rock stuff from the era, which I think those scores more date the movies than just the straight synth stuff from, Escape from New York or some of the earlier movies, at least to me. Like
my wife said she wasn't watching. She was like, "This sounds like Halloween 3." To her, it evoked that same feeling. I don't know. I was like, maybe this kind of sounds like it. It's been a while since I've watched Halloween 3.
Some of the reviews knocked it a little bit for the music being kind of... Because a lot of times, like, different styles of music can date movies big time.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people don't like the synth stuff that everyone's trying to replicate now.
Well, at least it's not, some bad pop song from that era.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's hugely preferable to a movie full of Slipknot and Korn and what a lot of horror movies from the late 90s and early 2000s did.
Basically the Spawn soundtrack.
Spawn. What were some other movies? Queen of the Damned, Jonathan Davis of Korn was like the one who did all the singing for it.
What Halloween? Doesn't one of the Halloweens have Creed or something in it?
That was
just a Creed poster.
That was Scream 3. I
Okay,
think.
yeah. What is Halloween? Is it H2O? There's a scene where they're like about to make love, or they're like in that place.
There's a Creed poster.
There's maybe a Creed poster, but there's definitely some rock song of that era, and I can't think about what it is. I like that sometimes when the film is maybe intentionally of that era, and I was like, okay, this is a fun thing to go back to.
If there's intention behind it and there's purpose, that's one thing.
You think sometimes it's to sell tickets with something.
Sometimes cross promoting.
Yeah.
So sometimes when you see like a movie that all of us on the podcast that watched did not care for, really, Suicide Squad, I feel like they're just throwing music in there to throw it in, because they had like all kinds of stuff from all kinds of eras all over the place all the time. So that I think distracts, as opposed to in this movie, In the Mouth of Madness, none of the soundtrack, I still liked it because it's Carpenter stuff. None of it distracted. It just did feel very 90s.
Yeah.
And like John Carpenter's doing like his remaster album, like redoing a lot of the themes to movies he's made over the years. And I know like when he was first promoting it, he's like, "Do you read Sutter Kane?" So I'm assuming they redo some of the music from this movie.
That's cool.
So
wouldn't it be awesome if they if he was like doing this to also do rescored versions of the movies? If they somehow could do that and release a special edition of each one with rescored tracks. That would be very cool.
Or you can go watch. There's a video I did a long time ago where I took Lost Themes, his album from a couple years ago or a year ago, and I took The Thing, and then I swapped some of the scenes out from The Thing, which were scored by Ennio Morricone, with some of the tracks from Lost Themes, just to see how it worked. Because, it had the more traditional, film score in The Thing, and I swapped it out with the synth stuff, and some of it worked, some of it didn't. It was just interesting to see how different The Thing would have felt with a non-traditional score if it had more of the synthy stuff. But, back to this movie, I do think that it is one that if you're not a fan of Carpenter or kind of the era of film, like, I don't think this is a general audience film that you can just have anybody watch. because if you just hand this off to, my friends who don't really watch horror, they're probably not going to connect with this one as much.
Yeah, I mean, the
If you're
plot
not-
and through line isn't tight enough. The mystery isn't strong enough to kind of keep things moving forward for you to really want to find out.
Yeah.
To really recommend this to a lot of people.
Yeah, I think it's more of a, with John Carpenter, just, compared to music, this is more of an album track, a deep cut. It's not like the radio single. So, Halloween, Big Trouble in Little China, The Thing, Escape from New York, I think those are movies that general just film fans can enjoy. Not saying that there's nobody who's just a general film fan that would enjoy, In the Mouth of Madness or Prince of Darkness, whatever. But I do think those are ones that you kind of need to know your audience when you're recommending that to people to watch. Because there's some people you could recommend this to, they'll probably be tuned out and just not really care at all. Like I said, it does feel very 90s and almost feels like a Stephen King adaptation, which is funny.
Yeah, it really does.
Because Sutter Kane, is kind of like a Stephen King type
They even
character.
say he outsells Stephen King.
Yeah, so, it almost has that feeling of a Stephen King film of that era, despite the fact that there's a writer in the movie that, is probably, what you said, they reference Stephen King.
Wouldn't it have been great if Stephen King played him?
Yeah.
That would have elevated this movie to another level, I think.
Yes, I mean, like, all those the elements are all fun. Like, the cinematography and all that stuff, like, all of it's good. Like, there's nothing that sticks out to me as being bad. Like I said, it's just different than some of the other movies Carpenter made. It's mostly set, like, in real-world sets and locations, so it doesn't have, the kind of low-budget effects work that, like, Escape from New York had. Or not necessarily low budget, just, low-ish budget, special effects of the time.
Set design is all believable.
Yeah, so it's, more realistic in that aspect. Like, there's good creature design. Some of them towards the end, like, you can see the edges of the designs. Yeah. But overall, they look pretty good. And it's not... There was one of the Hellraiser movies where I think there's literally just, like, a normal kind of looking baby doll, like, hammered onto a post or something. I saw it, I was like, that's not scary. It's not that level. Which is, it's still funny though, like, oh, it's just a normal baby doll toy. Like, what? I don't get what's scary. But then, like, there's probably one kid when they saw that, like, oh my god, that's a baby doll. I have that one. But in this movie, it doesn't really have that level. It's more of just, kind of like the David Lynch stuff. The story isn't super straightforward. It's not all clear what the rules are. It's not super defined. And then you have, Sam Neill's character, once he does believe everything, and then he, takes the axe and chops somebody after they get the book, the Sutter Kane book, then, that's what gets him locked up. And so you kind of see his descent, after interacting with all that stuff. So, good performance out of Sam Neill. And the story is, good, but, like, as we've said, it's not going to hook everybody. Kind of got to be, on the kind of genre bandwagon. And, like, if you're going to watch a Carpenter movie, so out of, like, taking all of the, like, the A-list Carpenter movies out of rotation, and you have, like, this, Prince of Darkness, Vampire, John Carpenter's Vampires,
Where does They Live
Ghost of
sit
Mars.
for you?
So that's an interesting question. Like, to me, I think They Live sits above this.
Yeah.
Simply because They Live has just iconic scenes.
Yeah, I don't think the ending in They Live is good.
The
Really,
ending is
it's
kind of rushed, but They Live has, the awesome Keith David, Roddy Piper alley fight scene. I'm here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. I'm all out of bubblegum.
Yeah, They Live is higher than this.
So They
for
Live
sure.
has, like, those iconic moments, and then it has all, when they wear the glass, you just see Obey and all the stuff that people have, referenced now with politicians and politics and media.
Whatever do you mean?
There's a lot of commercials. I think it was John Carpenter or somebody, like, shared a commercial that was made recently. This isn't a parody of They Live. This is a commercial. So, like, it was, a little bit heavy-handed on the messaging, but it had a message. Whereas this, with In the Mouth of Madness, there's really not a message per se.
It's just a fun genre
It's just
film.
more of a genre film.
I really have to watch some of those deeper cuts because, again, I really kind of loved this when I watched it. This time, the first time, time I didn't love it as much. but I also remember really loving Prince of Darkness. And
Yeah.
I really like John Carpenter's Vampires. I probably watched that a couple times. I own that one.
Yeah.
I think the other ones I'd watched on streaming services before, or maybe rent it. But I don't know. Like all those were kind of falling in the same line. John Carpenter's Vampires at the time, I liked James Wood a lot.
Yeah.
He's a little off the rails now in his personal life, but
Allegedly.
yeah,
Just
allegedly.
to cover ourselves for lawsuit purposes.
But like for me, I see him. He rants a little bit sometimes. I'm like, oh man, he's not as.
When you see him just in movies, you can enjoy the work he does.
So
When
I
you
really
see
liked him in
his Twitter persona, where there was the whole thing where he had the big lawsuit against someone that won for defamation or something, and then the guy passed away, and then he was talking about bragging about the guy being dead and all this stuff. He's going after every cent that the relatives had.
Yeah, so but before that, and maybe disconnected from that, I really liked seeing him in John Carpenter's Vampires because I loved him in Videodrome and stuff.
Yeah.
So I love that lineage. And Vampires was just fun. Again, not a thrilling narrative, but just a fun Carpenter film, and just a lot of cool scenes. So I don't know how I'd rank those. I had to watch them all again probably. But Prince of Darkness, I remember really thinking that was super cool as well.
Yeah.
I feel like the mythology in that I really like that, just kind of in the basement of this church.
Yeah.
They're fighting to save the world basically. Like I really love that concept. So
Yeah,
I don't know how to rank those really, but they're all in the same ballpark, I think.
Yeah, I think with Carpenter, it's just, defining tiers.
Yeah.
And then, you have like the tier 1, your tier 2, maybe tier 3, tier 4, with 4 being stuff like The Ward and
I haven't seen
his,
The
his
Ward.
Village of the Damned remake.
I haven't watched all of that. I've only seen bits and pieces.
So, Carpenter's an interesting filmmaker because a lot of his stuff isn't very similar. I feel bad because most of his movies, so Halloween was a big hit, Escape from New York was a hit, The Thing, which is in my opinion his best movie, at the time was a disappointment, critically and financially. It's gone on over time for, critically it's been reappraised and, hailed as what it is in my opinion, a horror masterpiece.
Just waiting for Escape from LA to be reappraised.
Well, but then, after a certain point, most of his movies did not, were not very profitable. And over time, with video sales and everything, they probably did make money. But
Their profits come from the remakes.
yeah. So, I mean, this movie is, like I said, definitely not tier 1 Carpenter, but, not bad. And it's something that, if you're a Carpenter fan and you've only watched the major movies, you can go back and check this one out.
And it's worth
something.
watching. If you really love Carpenter
and
you've cleared through his A-tier stuff, it's definitely worth watching because what else the hell are you going to do, Might as well see the rest of his catalog.
I mean, instead of watching...
Especially if it's a decent one.
Instead of watching Halloween again, you can watch this. So, like you said, there's these other ones. So if you had to give this a score out of 10, what score would you assign it out of 10?
I don't know. Probably, when I first watched it, I'd probably give it a 7.5 or 8.
Yeah.
Now I'd probably... I don't know. I just really like Sam Neill.
Yeah.
I really like some of the scenes of it. Just even Sam Neill's character with the insurance. He's trying to figure out if that one guy's lying in the beginning. I love that scene. There's certain scenes I love in it. I hate to give anything too low, between a 6 and a 7.
Yeah.
But 6 is... I've given 6 to some not good movies before. I'm not saying this is great.
Yeah.
I'll just give it a 7. I'll be nice. It's Carpenter.
Yeah.
I love Sam Neill. I'll go ahead and bump it up to a 7.
Well, too, the ratings, too, they're not necessarily comparable. Because one movie that's a 7 and another movie that's... Because, a movie that's a 7 that you're expecting to be a 10 is a disappointment. As opposed to a movie that's kind of, schlocky genre movie, but it exceeds expectations, surprises you, being a 7 is different.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. So, with this, when I say to me, it's more of a 6. If it's on a streaming service, you want to check it out. If you want to buy the DVD or Blu-ray and they're on sale or whatever, go right ahead, check it out. If you want to give this to your friends that aren't horror fans, probably not going to be the easiest one for them to get into. Every week,
you love Jurassic Park? Check out this Sam Neill film.
Yeah, and every week when we do the podcast reviews, Julie will be like, "Oh, what's the movie this week?" I'll tell her, and sometimes she wants to watch, and sometimes she doesn't. With this one, she had no interest. But I mean, that just too depends on timing and everything too. I think a 6. So not bad. I mean, there is enjoyment to be found, but it's not a must-watch classic.
No.
Carpenter movie that he'll be remembered for. It's just one of the films he made that is worth checking out. So I guess that'll wrap up our discussion of The Mouth of Madness. The next podcast we'll be reviewing It, which is, I'm assuming, going to be a massive, massive success. Just because the social media buzz for it is very high.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of people saying, I'm going to see it, I'm going to see it. So
Yeah.
that's going to transcend the typical horror barrier, I think, on, your typical horror returns.
It's set at the end of the 80s, so it's capitalizing on kind of like the nostalgia factor of Stranger Things and other, 80s-based properties. It's based on a Stephen King book. There's the 90s TV series a lot of people have fond memories of, and it's getting really good reviews, so I think it's primed to be a huge success. We'll be reviewing that movie on the next podcast, and if you want to see that, make sure you subscribe in iTunes. If you're listening on an audio-only device, you can also find us on Google Play, and you can always listen on YouTube.
Watch on YouTube, actually. This is a video podcast now that we're at the end of it.
Yeah, you can watch it. So you can always leave comments on YouTube, or you can send us an email at housebyvideostore, or you can send an email to the podcast at housebyvideostore.com.
Let us know what you thought about this movie, too.
Yeah, you can leave comments on our social media posts on Facebook. You can find all of our social media accounts at housebyvideostore.com. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and like I said, you can find all the links at housebyvideostore.com. Make sure to follow us on Instagram. We were at Days of Dead. We had some Instagram stories and different pictures. So, as we work on any other short films or go to conventions or deal with anything we think is cool, do some Instagram stories. So make sure to follow us there. If you want to find us specifically on there, you can find me on Twitter at Will_Droid.
And I'm at Blevin_Sean on Twitter and at Sean2D2 on Instagram.
Yep. And that'll bring this episode of the House by VSR podcast to a close. Thanks for listening.
House by the Video